You may be seated. Good morning. I am Leah McQueen, and Kyle was my senior assistant this year, mostly in American history. And on the panel with me today are Mr. Miller and Mr. Zinkgraff. Kyle will deliver his speech, and then we'll spend several minutes talking about his topic, and it'll last about an hour. So I'm going to pray and then hand things over to Kyle. Dear God, I thank you for Kyle, and I thank you for his message today, and I pray that it will be received and that it will give us things to think about, and I pray that you will help him just to be able to speak clearly and precisely his message for us. We thank you so much for our Savior, and we pray this in his name. Amen.
All right. When I was growing up, one of the things my family always did together was be in the outdoors. Whether it was going camping in Bonita Lake with my nan and pawpaw, going hunting on our deer lease in Garden City, or going fishing up in Pecos, New Mexico, we were constantly out in nature. These trips were always something I enjoyed, but I never really appreciated the things that we were able to do here in America in the outdoors until I got extremely sick, and it was taken away from me, and my whole perspective was shifted. When God created humans in Genesis 1:26, he said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." In this verse, God is saying that man's first job on earth is to care and preserve his creation. This does not mean we cannot use this creation to help us, but we must use it for his glory and the betterment of the creation. Using this gift God has given us like this is called stewardship. And any gift that God has given you, you can be a good steward of. One way you can do this is through wildlife conservation and hunting. For many, these two ideas may seem very contradictory, but for me, they go hand in hand. One thing that needs to be emphasized before anything else is the difference between nurture and exploitation. Wendell Berry gives us this example of exploitation versus nurture in his book, The Unsettling of America. He starts off by giving an example of a strip miner as someone who exploits, and a farmer who only cares for the health of his land, his family, and the people around him as someone who nurtures the land. From the beginning of American history and first European contact, people have constantly exploited the land and the people in it. Whether it was the first British colony in Jamestown that used the amazing climate and land in Virginia to grow tobacco, to grow their wealth, or when Spain came over and conquered Mexico and the people in Mexico and throughout Central America to expand their personal wealth and their power over others. Their goal was to make a profit in the most effective way possible. On the contrary, there have been many people groups that have come to America and have been nurturing towards the land. In American history, we read The Light and the Glory by Peter Marshall and David Manuel. In this book, the author talks about the pilgrims of the Plymouth colony and how they came to America and built a sustainable lifestyle while living off the land and only taking what they needed. They are a fitting example of being nurturers. In many ways, our culture today pushes us to exploit the other people and the land around us. But as with all, you can become successful through that. But as all other earthly successes go, going through life like this will only leave you unsatisfied. While if you live in a godly way, only taking the things that you need and being nurturing to the gifts God has given you, then you may not have as much earthly success, but you will be more fulfilled in the end. When Europeans first arrived in America, the abundance of wildlife and natural resources untouched by man was stunning. It seemed so expansive that there was no way that the land could be destroyed or the resources depleted, but that could not be further from the truth. There are many different species and subspecies of animals that have been pushed to the brink of annihilation in these formative years of America. One example is the American bison. It is estimated there were 40 to 70 million bison in the late 18th century. They ranged from Pennsylvania to northern Canada, all the way down to Mexico. And for native tribes in the Great Plains like the Comanche and the Sioux, these animals were a way of life. They depended on them for almost everything. And as pioneers started to move west, they realized how useful of a resource the bison was and started to harvest them. At first, individuals were hunting them as a means of personal survival. But as railroads started to spread throughout the American West, people were able to transport goods much faster, and people started to exploit this. Market hunting, as it was called, became extremely popular. At its highest point in 1871, market hunters killed over 5 million bison, devastating the populations and the Indians that lived off of them. In 1886, a census was taken, and it revealed that there were only 540 bison left in the entire United States. Early Americans did this to so many more species like this, such as elk and turkey. In the early 20th century, America started to implement things like the National Park Service to get people to go outside and experience the great gift God has given us, that is nature. And as people did this, they started to realize how beautiful it was, and they started to want future generations to experience the same things they were experiencing, and started to put more money into it and implementing things such as hunting seasons and wildlife preserves where America could manage wildlife and ensure their security for years to come. Over the last 100 years, the government has realized the devastation people have caused to America and the natural resources that we have in this environment. Because of this, the United States has started to nurture the land and tried to reverse the damage it has done to the environment. One of the big points I want to point out today is that hunting, when it is done in an ethical and respectful way, can be the driving force of wildlife conservation in America. While researching this paper, I had the privilege of interviewing Gary Wolf. Gary started as a park ranger in Big Bend in the late 60s, and since then has been a prominent member of the wildlife conservation community, working for many different conservation groups, including the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, where he was the president and CEO of it from 1998 through 2001. When I asked Gary to give a definition of wildlife conservation, he said, "It is the practice of protecting and managing wild species and their habitats in such a way to maintain healthy and sustainable populations of those species." In this definition, there are two key things I want to point out. Number one, we're trying to preserve the health of the population of the animal species, not one in particular animal. The second thing I want to point out is that we're not only trying to preserve the animals, but the habitats they live in. And hunting in an ethical way means to respect the laws of the land where you're hunting. You should only kill what you intend to bring home and use, and make sure it is the environment that you took the animal from will also be healthy after you do it. The problem is, some people may ask, why don't we just stop hunting and let nature take its course and naturally balance itself out? And this would be extremely unhealthy for a lot of species. Because humans have been inside of the ecosystem and the relationship that animals have to nature for so long, that it would mess things up. Through hunting, introducing non-native species, and through things like building, the ecosystem would be completely unbalanced and healthy for many animals. Again, hunting may take the life of an individual animal, but our goal of it is to preserve the overall health of the species and the ecosystem. In our Great Books 2 class, we read a book by Aristotle, and we talk about the golden mean. The basic principle says that virtue is found in the middle of two extremes. And this is also true in hunting. If you do not hunt at all, you are letting the ecosystem become unbalanced and letting a lot of animals become unhealthy, and they may go extinct. While if you do not, or if you hunt too much, you may end up destroying an entire species. So you must find a middle ground that is not too much nor too little. Another reason hunters are essential to conservation of the wildlife in America is because of funding. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation says that hunters raise over $1.6 billion per year for conservation. One way they do this is through the Pittman and Robertson Act, which was requested by hunters and passed in 1937 to fund conservation efforts. This act is the main way the government produces produces or generates revenue for wildlife conservation and includes an 11% tax on wholesale of long guns and their ammunition and a 10% tax on handguns and things like bows and arrows. This tax is paid by manufacturers, producers, and importers and applies to all commercial sales and imports, whether the purpose is hunting, sports shooting, or personal defense. According to the Congress Research Service, in 76 years it has been in service, it has raised over $18.8 billion for states to keep and use wildlife, or to use and keep wildlife healthy in their area. Hunters have also started many different conservation groups, such as Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, the Ducks Unlimited, and the Dallas Safari Club. All these groups put money annually into the health and wellness of certain species, and this money is raised through corporate sponsorships and donations. All these groups are looking to ensure the future of wildlife and their habitats so future generations can experience them. In the book Stewards of Eden, the author Sandra L. Richter talks about why the environment should be important to us as Christians. Early in her writing, Richter points out that many Christians do not take environmentalism or conservation seriously and have no idea where this would fit into their walk with the Lord. There are many different examples given, but the first one she gives is because of politics. Environmentalism often gets pushed to the political left, and while most Christians are usually right-leaning. Because of this, people realize that this doesn't go with their political party's ideas and go against it just because of that. This is extremely saddening. Taking care of the environment and the land around us should be one of the things in America that we all can agree on, and should not be something that we argue about. But like everything else in America, you have to pick a side. Another reason that was pointed out was the church puts this on the back burner and makes it an afterthought. Many believers are taught that we should use all of the earth's resources to any extent. That way we can convert as many people to Christianity as possible. And this is not entirely true. We should do everything in our power to convert people to Christianity, yes. But it should not come at the expense of God's creation. I like to view conservation and environmentalism like this. Say Leonardo da Vinci came up to you and gave you the Mona Lisa and said, "This is my masterpiece. I'm putting you in charge of taking care of it and making sure nothing happens to it." You would do everything you possibly could to protect that and to protect that painting. So why don't we do this when the Lord does the same thing? God, the infinite and all-powerful creator of this universe, gave you, me, and every other person on this earth the gift and opportunity of taking care of his masterpiece. So why do we push this calling from the sky to the side when it is so important to God? This is the first job he gives us as humans on earth. Christians do this type of thing with all types of stewardship. Whether it's taking care of their money or any other gifts the Lord has given you, we always tend to take it for granted and mismanage it. As I was growing up, I would always take for granted the great gift from God that nature is. And I felt this way until it was taken away from me. When I was 11, I got extremely sick and spent over 100 days in the hospital that year. And I struggled just getting out of bed in the morning. And so going out in the outdoors and doing the things I loved was completely out of the picture. So I remember sitting in the hospital planning hunting and camping trips with my family just because I wanted to think about and do something that I loved. And because of this, I will never go on a trip in the outdoors where I will not appreciate nature and the people who have preserved it so that I can experience God's greatness through its beauty. Whether it's through ethical hunting, population control, through donations to conservation groups, or through something just as simple as recycling, and being a good steward on earth should be incredibly important to us as Christians. We need to preserve God's creation as much as we possibly can so that other people in the future can see God through his masterpiece. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You did it. Was that the hard part or the easy part?
I think it was a hard part.
Okay, so this should be easy.
Sure.
So do you have any plans in the future to do anything related to your topic? Or is it just something that will be like career-wise, or is it just something that you'll always value?
I don't think it'd be a career. Honestly, there's just not a lot of money in that type of field. So, but no, it's definitely going to be something that I care about for the future. It's something that my parents instilled in me for a long time, and I plan on hunting for the rest of my life. So it's definitely something that I'm going to care about and do my part in for as long as I possibly can.
Okay. So tell us about any plans that you do have. I realize they may change in the future, but
I mean, me and my family go hunting every year, and a lot of the time, or recently, we've kind of been stuck here in Texas. So we sit in a deer blind, and it's more population control than anything. It's not really like hunting in the true sense of it. But I'm planning on going. Me and my dad have planned on going elk hunting. We tried to go this year, but I got sick again. So I'm hoping I can go next year. But conservation wise, it's just conservation is one of those things where it's more you need to be educated about it. And so you can vote and go out and make a change through that, and donations. There's not a whole lot like people can do just like actively. I mean, there is, but like recycling, things like that, just taking care of the little stuff that we can do here in our own homes is really the things that we can do here outside of donations and voting for laws to be passed and things like that. So, I plan to make it a point of emphasis going forward. But
okay. And then tell us about what you are going to do, like college and career and
I'll be going next year. I'll be going to Midland College. Don't really know what I want to major in yet.
Me either.
So right now I'll probably be going into finance. Something I've always been interested in, but hopefully go there for a year or two. Then I would like to go to A&M, but plans change all the time, so I don't know if that's in the future for me, but kind of just going with it at the moment.
Okay. So I could talk for a long, long time about your topic, as you know, but I want to talk about some more kind of personal things first before I dive into ideas in your paper. So I want to know why is being in the outdoors important to you? Like, what does it do for you mentally, emotionally, spiritually? Why is it important?
Like I said, I grew up in it, and like doing that, you always develop something you love from your childhood, and that was one of those things. And also, it's a way that like I can spend time with my family. It's all something that we love to do and go out, and whether it's hiking, camping, something like that. It's a good way to connect with them. And then, question was like, why? Sorry.
Like, what does it do for you, like spiritually, emotionally?
Okay. But like, it's so it's really calming. It's you can see God through it. Really, like it's one way I see God through stuff, and just seeing His beauty, and like it's so awe-inspiring when you walk up a mountain, you look across it, you see a valley, and it's just like beautiful, and it's hard to explain that feeling, but that's one of the things that's really big for me, is just seeing God through that.
So it's being outdoors is about way more than just being outside. Mm-hmm. I mean, you talked about it being important to your family and those relationships, but also like being a powerful reminder of God in your life. So do you think that that's something that the actual being outside and in nature and in God's creation, is that something that is just specifically valuable to you because you like it and you grew up doing it? Or do you think that has value for everyone?
I think it has value for everyone. A lot, like, especially here in the city, or I mean, Midland's not really a city, but being in civilization, it's good to get outside of that. And go out in the outdoors and like kind of disconnect from everything and be in a place that God created and not that man created. It's not, nature isn't flawed like a building that we like humans built. So like it's just good to see God through that kind of stuff and be in a place where you can feel Him.
Okay. So switching just a little bit, you talked in your paper about having an illness that you've struggled with from time to time, and including last year, you missed a lot of school. And you talk about how that kind of changed your perspective of your time outside, and we've had conversations about that, how you kind of just took it for granted. So I want to know if there's other things besides this issue that have changed. How has your illness changed you in other ways besides just giving you perspective about this? Are there other ways you've grown from dealing with that?
There's a couple of reasons, or a couple of ways that it did. Number one is it taught me how to work hard, because, I mean, I've always played sports in my life, and going through something like that where I'm just not, like, physically able to do the things that other people are. So I have to work 10 times harder just to be in a place that I want to be. And it just taught me to work, and just like sometimes it's just like I have a hydration issue, so sometimes just getting out of bed in the morning for me is really difficult. And I think that's going through something that's hard and learning how to work is really important for us. And I had the opportunity to learn that early in my life. I don't have to, so I think that was really big for me. And then another reason was to not take the people and the things that you do for granted. I know if you ask a lot of people before I got sick this past year, this past year, I was not the nicest person to people. And, getting sick kind of made me realize I don't have a whole lot of time, and these are great people that I want to be around. And it taught me, like, I need to go out and make relationships with people. It's not just going to come to me. And it just made me, appreciate the things I'm doing. Like I'm playing baseball right now. That may not sound like a big thing to some people, but I haven't been able to play a full season of baseball since I was 11, and I'm finally getting to do that. And there's no words for that. It's just something I've always loved, and finally being able to do it again is really nice to do. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. All right, I'm going to pass it.
Man, where to start, Kyle? So, let's start with hunting, I guess. So, I've never been on a deer hunt. Good. Can you hear me? All right. Never been on a deer hunt. Never wanted to go on a deer hunt. The picture that I get is you're sitting there in a deer blind board stiff for like however long you got to wait by yourself. Early. Probably cold. And whatever else, And I love watching it on TV. That's fun. People have talked to me about it, but it just had never appealed to me. But been on a lot of like pheasant hunts where you're walking, you're talking, you're with people, which are important, and then you get to kill something, right? Killing a bird though is one thing, but like shooting a deer, I don't know if I could handle it. I'm afraid I'd get up there and just start weeping like Bambi just got shot. So, I have a lot of differences in what you think is really fun and what I think is fun. So, as we move through this, I just wanted to get that out in the open.
Well, okay. First off, the deer hunting we do in Texas is different than what a lot of people do hunting wise. Because if you go to New Mexico or Colorado, they go out hunt, or like what my dad does and Tristan do, elk hunting. You don't sit in a blind. That's they call it spot and stalk, where you go out and you're sitting on top of a mountain and you're with your binoculars and you kind of just sit there and watch the mountains and make sure, or look for elk. And you're able to talk to people during that, and once you see an elk, you start stalking it, and it's actually fun.
Yeah.
You get trying to get as close as you possibly can to this animal that doesn't know you're there until and once they do figure out you're there, they're gone.
Yeah.
And it's just that stuff. I haven't been able to do that yet.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm not a big fan of sitting in a blinded hunt like that either. But there's definitely different ways to deer hunt.
Yeah, see, that sounds pretty fun. The adventure of it, right?
Yeah.
The adventure of it. You bring something up in your book. I wanted to see I wanted to see how good your vocabulary is.
Uh-oh.
So I just wanted to ask you if you know what integrity means. Can you give me a definition of integrity?
Yeah, it's just doing the right thing all the time, no matter who's watching.
Okay. What if I were talking about a bridge? What does it mean if a bridge has integrity?
It holds up no matter what, whatever you put it through.
Okay, yeah, and so it's the same all the time, right? That integrity is you're the same, you're consistent, and you do what you're designed to do, right? And so when you talk about this stewardship and you have this passion about the stewardship of conservation or nature, what do you think the most important thing is? To steward in this life.
I think discipline is really big. Whether it's through money or through the things that we do out in nature, you need to be disciplined in the way that you go about it so that you don't exploit this thing that God gave you.
Okay. Okay, so I want something that's a noun that's real. Do you think it's the most important thing? Do you think the most important thing for us to steward is that water right there? Do you think the most important thing to steward is how clean this building is? If you were to say, man, God has put me on this planet to steward something, what would I pick to do?
I don't think stewardship should be applied to one thing in particular.
I agree. But if you had to pick one, what would it be?
Gosh, I feel like I'm back in basketball where he's asking something and it's just there's one in particular answer that he's looking for, and he ain't.
So let me ask this. Let me ask this. Do you think it would be things or do you think it would be people?
I think people are more important for sure.
Okay. And then do you think how important does stewardship become to you with your personal body and your health? What have you learned about stewardship with this gift that God's given you, just like He gave us this planet? And He said, hey, your body's a temple. How do you steward your personal body with all you know and all you've been through?
I guess it's just allowing good
I'm not looking for any magical answer. I'm just saying, how do you do it? How do you stay healthy? Mm-hmm. Right?
It's just allowing good things to be around me or putting good things in my body. You know what I mean? Whether it's people or the things I eat or the things I drink, I think it's really important to be disciplined on the things that you allow, or whether it's people that you're around, they're really important, or if it's the thing that you're eating, they're really important. And just staying disciplined on one big thing is if I don't take my medicines for 2 days straight, there's a really good chance I get sick.
Yeah.
So staying disciplined on things like that, and
right,
the intake of that kind of stuff. Just trying to stay healthy.
Okay. I promise this is going somewhere. So then how does that affect your stewardship outlook when you look at, say, your RT group and those 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th graders? How does stewardship affect your behavior toward them?
I think it's just pouring good things into them. There's a psalm, I think in the Bible that just talks about that we were talking about in Bible study, I think last summer with Ryan Keenest, but like it was just talking about my cup it might be beatitude, I don't know. My cup overflows with your love. So if you put good things into yourself, the things that are going to come out are naturally going to be good. So I think being a good steward to myself also allows those people to see how I'm conducting myself, and then it also allows me to pour good things into them.
So I think what I'm getting at is, how do you see this idea that you're so passionate about and stewardship of the planet, which I think is awesome? How does that overlap? Because you've come to a point where you go, this is important to me, this is passionate to me, because God gave me this gift, or gave us all this gift of the earth, the garden, and said, go and take care of it. How does that overlap in all of your life, whether it's money, whether it's stewardship with your family, whether it's stewardship with your friends, whether it's stewardship? Are these all gifts? And how do we nurture all these gifts around us and not exploit all these gifts around us? Has that changed how you do life?
Okay. It definitely has. Gosh. Sorry, I'm kind of going blank on... So all the gifts God has given me, how that affects...
Yeah, I'm just kind of asking, do you see the connection with all that? And maybe what's enabled you to see it?
I mean, I think my sickness enabled it. Like, it took everything away from me that I loved and broke me down.
Yeah. And
made sure I knew the things that were important to me.
Yeah.
And I don't take anything for granted anymore.
Yeah.
And I hope, and whether it's nature, whether it's people, whether it's sports, anything, my family, I don't take any of it for granted.
Yeah.
And I make sure I do a good job of taking care of those things now, way more than I did before. And I care, the things I care about, I put a lot of effort into and work into. And I think that's how stewardship is reflected through my life.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, and I think this is a powerful attitude that most people think. When they hear the word stewardship, they just think, 10%, I got to give to something, right? Or I've got to take care of the planet, so I need to recycle this cup, whatever it is. But this idea of stewardship is truly being a giver, right, instead of a taker. And if we can have that attitude toward our RT group, or toward our baseball team, or toward our family, or toward the planet, then it makes a big difference starting from that point. And I think that's really powerful. So I'll pass the mic.
Kyle, within this idea of stewardship and kind of specifically as you're speaking on conservation, you're saying that one of the reasons we're to do this is because it's our job, and then something that's frequently come up is that we are to think about future generations to experience this. And so why should I care about future generations?
I mean, our job here on earth is to bring as much people to Christ as possible. And us living in the present right now can start doing that for future generations right now. Because we're taking care of this. And like I said, going into nature, you could see God through that if you're looking for it pretty easily. And see his creation, and preserving that for future generations may help other people come to God, because they can see his creation through that. You know what I mean?
Okay. So future generations may be able to see God in nature. For your experience, you've listed a lot of things your parents have done. have you always enjoyed nature, or your dad's making you go out there at some extent, and so was there ever a moment you did not enjoy participating in this?
Like just being out in nature?
Yeah.
Or
yeah, every time your dad or your mom said, "Hey, we're going to nature," and you said, "Yes, I'm excited. This is my favorite thing." That's what you're saying right now, but
yeah, I know it definitely was not when I was a kid. I didn't like getting dirty, like.
Okay.
But and like I said, I don't really like sitting in a deer blind for 6 hours just to kill a deer. I'd like to be doing something, and there was a lot of this stuff. Like I still have trouble just getting out of the house and going to the deer lease just because I don't know, I'm kind of lazy. But
okay. So what did your parents do to get you to overcome that and actually care about doing these things?
They just kept throwing me into it. I think it was like just as much as you experience, the more you experience something, the more you're going to love it, no matter what. I won't say that. Or if it's a good thing, I think the more you experience things, the more you're going to love it. But so I think just going out in nature as much as possible, you get to see things more and appreciate them more. And I think they just.
Okay, so personal experience and being forced to have personal experience. What else? Did they offer anything else besides just making you experience it?
I mean, if you talk to my dad, there's about 3 things that he talks about. First thing he talks about is hunting. So just expressing the love that they have for the outdoors also is big. And when they talk about it, you can tell they're passionate about it.
Okay, so what are the other 2 things your dad talks about? Just out of curiosity, I have guesses.
CrossFit and working out, and either Joe Rogan or Jocko Willink. Okay. I think are the top 3.
Okay, all right. I was gonna guess food somewhere in there as well. Maybe that's not a top 3. So you're pretty lucky because your dad has talked about this. He's shared his passion. He's forced you to do it. Mr. Miller was not forced to have those experiences, and so what are the resources for a person when it's not their own parents saying, in your future, we want this good for you? Because it seems like I get off the hook. If my dad doesn't tell me hunting is awesome, you have to go, then it's not my responsibility anymore. So how is that person supposed to participate in this?
Okay. First off, I don't think. Look, hunting's hard. Killing an animal and taking a life is really difficult, and some people just can't do that. You know what I mean? And it can be really emotional. I remember the first time I killed a deer, it was hard, just to realize, hey, I just took this life. But so a lot of people aren't able to do that, which is okay, you know. But I think just going out in nature, putting money into it, because I think our government is doing a really good job. Has done a really good job of preserving things lately, preserving nature and things. So just putting more money into it, just being educated is huge. Just like when a new bill comes up that talks about, we're putting this into environmentalism, putting this money into environmentalism, going and reading about it, or researching it and learning what it's supposed to do and to help, and see if you agree with that is also big. So just like, I don't know,
Let me ask you one more question.
Yeah.
The government educates you about something. Your dad shares his love for something. What is going to have the stronger impact in your own life?
My parents.
Or let's say it's not your parents, just because.
I think it's personal.
You get to share your love for something. The government educates someone. What is going to change someone's life?
More? Okay. Yeah, I think it's personal experiences with other people. Because, like, the government's so distant that you're not having a relationship with them. I think if a person comes up and talks about their love for it, you're going to get a lot more out of it. Just because it's, like, it's personal for that person, and then that becomes personal to you. Because you hear, like, I don't know, the government can kind of, like, you may not, like, trust the government with everything. And usually you can trust people with like that better. I don't know how to explain it. Sorry.
Okay. I'll pass it for now.
Okay, so you talk about how we've kind of made conserving the environment, taking care of it, a political issue. And because of that, we disagree about it. Mm-hmm. Do you think the disagreement is more from whether we should do it or not, why we should do it or not, or how we should do it or not?
I think a lot of it's how, because people don't want to pay more money to the government for that kind of stuff, so that also that plays into a big part of the political side, and like I think that's a big aspect of it, and then also people don't want to take initiative. I think that's big. Because I think a lot of people would be like, "Oh yeah, I think we should like conserve nature," but like they never really do anything about it. So I think it's more of how and people don't want to do it themselves. They're just like, "Oh, someone else can do this." So I think the how is the biggest part of that.
Okay, I agree, because I think most people, if you asked them, we don't want Yosemite to disappear or Yellowstone or fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. But we do often tend to focus on the disagreement and not the agreement that we should all do it. And it also, I think, it's very complex. So, like, why would people disagree about the how? Like, what bumps up against conservation?
I think funding is a big part, because people don't want to like pay more taxes, whether like if they don't know, because they don't know exactly where it's going to sometimes.
I don't want to pay more taxes personally, but I do want to conserve God's creation.
Could you restate the question?
I think it was just what complicates the issue.
Also people like to argue, and disagree. Like they'll hear, if depending on which side proposes the bill, that can make or break the decision on if somebody votes for it or not. So I think that's also big.
Do you think there's ever any incidences, because this idea has been talked about already, when it comes to being stewards, like what's more important? Are people more important? Are things more important? Is creation more important? And I think we said people ultimately were. So do conservation efforts ever exploit or damage people?
Yes, they do. Whether it's expansion of cities that's going to take away the environment that some animals live in and kill a lot of animals, or whether it's like somebody's job to like here in Midland. I'm not saying anything about it, but like drilling rigs are everywhere, and those can kind of invade on the environment of also animals. So I think expansion is a really big thing.
So, I mean, I feel like that explains how man's activity can hurt creation, but can efforts to conserve creation hurt people?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's like the goal. It's like the golden mean. You need to find an area where it's balanced. And if you look at California right now with their or LA, I guess, with their mountain lion issue, it's hurting a lot of people because they're trying to conserve and this species of animal.
You might need to fill us in on that specific issue.
Okay, so
just saying.
Californians don't like guns, hunting, all that kind of fun stuff. So they were like, well, so they stopped mountain lion hunting, like tags and stuff like that, giving out government or like a tag is when the government pretty much allows you to kill an animal. So I stopped giving out tags to everybody, like publicly, and recently the populations of mountain lions have skyrocketed, and they've started to kind of creep into civilization and where
eat people's pets, stuff like that.
Yeah, like just walking through neighborhoods and like just stuff like that is not okay. I think there's definitely a balance where like, okay, humans come first over animals. Sucks, but like humans have a. I think humans were divinely created in a point where they're like special, and God created them in His own image. So we are more important than other animals. So like, I think at a certain point, if something's hurting humans, you need to stop. You know, or you need to do something to stop it.
And I would think conservation efforts are kind of always like revolving or changing depending on the situation, like that. Yeah. So this is kind of switching gears, but not entirely. So you talked about this idea of exploiting versus nurturing, and how that fits in with stewardship. So I want to know, like, how responsible am I for what I do every day that might exploit creation? I can give you an example if you want.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like, let's say I go buy an iPhone, a new one, when my old one's perfectly fine. And in the process of making that iPhone, people in creation are exploited. Am I responsible for that?
Yes, because it's not something that you absolutely need. You know, I mean, everyone gets things that they don't need, but like a lot of times, going in and buying things that aren't essential for you at the moment can really hurt other people and hurt other things and hurt nature. And just realizing what you're doing and like balancing whether, hey, is this something I really absolutely need and is going to help me right now, or is it just another thing?
What if I'm uneducated about whatever that product is and I don't know? Do I still have a responsibility then?
Mm-hmm. It's your fault for not educating yourself. Yeah, I think anything you look into doing, I think you need to, or anything you do, you need to look into it before you do. Like you actually like go out and do it.
And then I keep coming back to this idea that all of this is very complicated. That doesn't make it any less important or necessary, but that it's complicated. So I think of something like an organic farmer probably nurtures the earth better than a big industrial traditional farmer, but not everybody can afford to buy that. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So then what do I do?
Like I said, it's a balance. You need to figure out, hey, is this going to help certain people, or is it not? Because obviously, because people come first, and everything. But that's not saying that we shouldn't care about nature because of that. So, I don't know if I said that right. If it's going to help people, and it has to come at the cost of a little bit something in nature, then I think we should do it. But if it's not completely needed, and you can do the same, or you can achieve the same goal without doing it, I think you should look into that before.
Okay. But most of all, I should be educated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really big.
All right. Thank you.
What time are we supposed to wrap this up? Okay. Do you want to ask any questions?
You do what you need to do. Steward your time.
Okay. Thank you. Man. Well, Kyle, I'm trying to think how I want to go with this. Okay, so you allude to something in your paper. Do you know where I'm from, Kyle? Where I grew up?
North Carolina?
Yeah. You know what the cash crop is in North Carolina?
Tobacco.
Yeah. It's kind of like the oil business here, right? So when you started saying, man, people came and they grew tobacco for their own personal gain just to make money, kind of offended me and my family.
It's not always a bad thing to get offended.
Yeah. So when we talk about this idea of exploitation and stewardship, I think people. Well, I'll wait to say that later. Do you think it's possible for people to mass produce something and not exploit nature or not exploit other people? Let's just keep it in the agricultural realm. Yeah. So let's just say wheat.
Yeah, I think it's just the way you go about it and how you handle that situation. Are you doing everything you can to care for nature while you're also doing this, or are you just going about doing this, not caring about the repercussions of the actions that you're doing? I think that's a really big part of it, and I think that's the main aspect of how to be a good steward in that way.
Because a lot of people would say, man, we got to all be farmers because we've got to grow our own crops and we've got to produce it for ourselves. What's the problem with that?
Nothing else gets done. Other important things are put to the side.
Okay, maybe, but what else? What happens if we, all in this room right here, we commit and we go, okay, we're all going to go buy our own piece of land and we're all going to work it individually, and guess what you get? Just what you produce. What's the problem with that? Or is there a problem with it? Let's pretend we're in Arkansas where you can grow stuff. Not in Midland.
Just not being a good Christian at that point, because we're called to give the excess things that we don't need to other people that may be in need of it. And
okay, but let's just think practically.
Okay.
So you're going to go grow all your own food. How's that going to work for you? How much land are you going to have?
I don't know. You didn't tell me.
Well, let's just take a guess. Let's say you get 1 acre of land.
Okay.
All right. So you get to grow all your own food. What are we talking about here as far as exponential growth or providing for other people? Can you actually do that on 1 acre of land?
No, because
probably not.
No.
What else is going to affect how much food you get to grow?
How much work you put into it?
Okay.
Is that what you're getting at?
And then look out here at all these people out here. Do you think everybody out there can work the same?
No.
Probably not.
No.
Right. And so what's going to happen to these people out here that can't work on their land and can't produce their food?
They ain't getting any food.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And just to take it a step further, let's talk about, what do you think is the biggest invention in history that has allowed us to actually feed the most people? Any ideas?
Probably like something like an automobile, like a train.
That's a good guess. That's a really good guess. Why would you say that?
Because you can transport it more faster.
All right, now think about how come you can transport it. Because it wouldn't just have to be a train, right?
Would it be like preserving, how we preserve food?
No, what makes a train go?
Oil.
There you go. Okay, when the oil happened, all of a sudden, and so who do we feed with all the wheat we make in America?
People, yeah.
Yeah, the whole world. The whole world. And so I guess just my point is, I think you're exactly right. No matter whether it's Walmart or whether it's the little country store down here that's just selling on the corner, you can have an attitude of stewardship or you can have an attitude of exploitation, and either one's the stewardship is the way to go. Mm-hmm. I'll let Mr. Zinkgraf.
Yeah, that's all right. You threw out Wendellberry in your thesis. You threw out, what was her name?
Richter. Sandra
yes,
Richter?
Sandra Richter.
Yeah. Look at that.
So obviously there's a couple sources that are talking about this idea of stewardship with the Christian mindset. For someone who doesn't have parents talking to them about conservation or Wendellberry's more agrarian society in general, but who is someone that we should read or listen to help develop our thoughts on like what we should do besides your dad?
Okay, so there's a show on Netflix. It's called you might have heard of it. It's called Meat Eater. It's a great show. But like the guy's name is Steve Rinella, and he's an American writer and grew up hunting and fishing and had a conservation mindset from a really young age. And he's produced a lot of different things, but they just do it right. So like, say you throw on the Sportsman channel right now, you're probably going to see some hillbilly dude from Alabama sitting in a deer blind with their new with a crossbow and their new corn apple mix, and trying to market that. You're just going to be like, oh, I don't want to participate in this. But if you watch Meat Eater, he'll go and explain like the beauty of nature and why hunting is important. And he has a podcast that's he does a really good job of explaining the same thing. And there's an episode where a couple episodes where he's antelope hunting near, I can't tell, I don't know if it's West Texas or East New Mexico, but he goes 2 episodes where he doesn't kill anything. If you turn on something on like a regular hunting show, that they're not going to show that, but he's showing what hunting is. Hunting isn't just about killing something. It's about the experiences of going out in nature and learning more about the animals and the environment that you're in. and he explains that really well. He also produced a movie on Netflix called The Stars in the Sky, and it's just it's a bunch of hunting stories, and they explain like what hunting means to them, and he does a really good job. So, and he also has a few books out. He's like my role model. He's great.
Man, Wendell Berry and this guy are a little bit on the extreme ends of things. So, well, thanks for your ideas today. There's kind of a continuation of the conversation. You get to ask questions at this time, and so we'll allow you to get to control the conversation.
All right, you can answer either one of these, but either one time you experienced God's beauty through nature, or just a story that you really love that happened while you were hiking, hunting, something like fishing, something like that. Something out in nature, you know? Yeah, there you go.
So you want me to summarize 50 plus years of being outside?
Yep.
30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So I also grew up in a hunting, fishing, outdoorsy family. And my favorite thing is we never went on vacation really while I was growing up until I was a senior in high school. But we had this old crummy lake house on a small lake close to where I grew up, so it was like 10 minutes away. And that's my childhood. And that's where my love of the outdoors came from. And I think that's why that is the place where I best connect with God. And I see God's work in the world. Although I've learned to see it as much in people over the years. But that's where I still go to just kind of get recentered. So mine's the lake. I mean, we would, in the fall, we'd have to rake leaves, which was kind of ridiculous. It's like they're everywhere. But we would, rake leaves and make trails and then, ride through the trails and the leaves. And we just, my parents, we were little and we just take off and go for miles. And so that's kind of where that came from for me. So that's it.
Man, I was just sitting here brainstorming, thinking through, while I haven't hunted that much, I've been outdoors my whole life. Mm-hmm. And so growing up in North Carolina, I grew up on 40 acres of forest, and I had a cousin that lived up the hill from me, or up the mountain, and a cousin that lived down the mountain, and we did everything outdoors, and we were outside all the time. And I remember as a kid walking, we would heat our house with a wood burning stove, and we had a half a mile loop through this forest, and we're talking 80-foot pines, and you can't see from here to that door because there's so many trees and everything's thick if you get off the path. And so you'd be out there as a kid, and the wind would start blowing, and those pines would just really start swaying, probably about 30 feet both ways at the very top, and they'd start creaking, and you're out there as a kid, and you think they're going to fall over on you. But it's just memory after memory that I could share, and so I could share a funny story. I could share, I don't know. It's just nature and being out there and seeing. You don't realize it when you're in it, unless somebody points it out to you. But looking back on my life and thinking about how much I've been outside. If you've seen the movie Last of the Mohicans, okay, so it's got all the scenic beauty. So I learned to water ski behind a fishing boat right in front of that mountain, and you're thinking, how am I here? But I didn't even know that was that special, because that's where I grew up. And then on the Blue Ridge Parkway while I was at App State, and hiking and climbing rocks and being on Grandfather Mountain and just that experience. And then moving out here and getting to go to Vermejo Park Ranch and fish for trout. And so it's just unbelievable what God has provided for us to go and see Him, but also do it with people and have all these memories, lots of great memories. So nature's very important.
You said nature so much, I think of that like nature is neat guy, right?
Yeah.
Nature's neat.
I know. I was reading through my favorite.
That's pretty neat. The whole premise of stewardship, and I think the gift that God gives us, is that we see Him in those ways, and whether it's through the hunting or the taking care of the earth. And so it's like every experience is an opportunity to see Him more clearly. And so I grew up in New Braunfels. We have rivers and lakes and trees and like deer everywhere. And so they don't really manage the deer population that's like out of control down there. And so we were telling the boys as we were going to my parents' house, is like, there's going to be deer everywhere. It's like, do you remember the deer? And they're just getting pumped up. Yeah, we're going to see deers. We're going to see deers. And it was like, deer, not deers. And so we hyped it up. We were pumped. And there's this really old lady named Willie Mae Kaufman who lives next to my parents. And we pull up and they look out in her yard. And they're like, deers. I'm like, deer. And I look over and there's a cement deer. And I'm like, y'all are idiots. And so it's like my kids are remedial with nature, living in Midland, and we step out of the car and there was a baby deer like right there in the grass that they had seen. It was like they got to go and like we sat down and it just like was kind of ducked and covering, and the mom's nowhere around. And so we spent like 5 minutes just within a foot of a baby deer and like talking about it and talking through like, well, why is this? Why do they have spots? Why isn't it moving? All these questions that little boys have. And so I think like when I look back, it's those like now the memories like with my kids and just getting to explain, like as we see these things, we're actually looking and getting this glimpse of like who God is and what He's provided for us. And so I look back in my own life, and those are the ones when someone else has helped me to see like this is why we can appreciate this thing that stands out in my life. And so that would be my.
Did you feed it?
No. Good. No. Willie Mae feeds them. Like my parents are always like, we're gonna let our kids shoot them. And like that scares her for like one day, and then she feeds them again. So yeah, New Braunfels is ridiculous. So. Well, Kyle, thank you. Let's pray. God, we thank you for Kyle. We thank you for the life he brings to our school. We thank you for the things, the image of you that he sees in the world around him and the people around him. We thank you for parents that have grown him in these ideas, in the desire to steward and understand the gifts, just personally and in this world, that are available for us to know you, to love others, and to make you known. We thank you for his health. We thank you he's getting to play baseball. And we thank you for this day. Amen.